Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This video is exclusively dedicated to the interview process of uh, competitive exams in general in your life with a special focus on RBI Grade B interviews. The reason of making this video is pretty simple. I have faced the interview panel twice and I accept the fact that I was not able to do well in those two interviews. I believe I have certain experiences that I would like to share with you through this video. In addition to that, this year I've also taken mock interview of more than 15 aspirants who appeared for RBI Grade B examination. Around 6 or 7 of them have made it to the final list. So at this point of time, I think I have fair understanding of what a candidate should do and not do in the RBI interview process. And of course, there are few learnings from my own journey for RBI Grade B examination, which I would like to share, especially in the context of the interview. So I'll try to share everything through this video, and I hope you find this video useful for you. And not only for the RBI examination, but other, let's say, NABARD or other competitive examination. Some tips are there which I think will be suitable for you. Personally, it's a topic which is very close to me because I have seen, you know, quite huge failures in this stage, and if you ask me how it can impact you psychologically, trust me, I was someone who was very confident facing RBI panel. But once I faced the panel and the kind of evaluation I got in my mark sheet, I was absolutely distraught, and it broke my confidence of facing interviews. And this getting out of this state of mind, which lingered for over 2 years period, impacted my second interview as well. Developing that fear of interview. This is something which I've been fighting over since 2022, and at this point of time, I feel I have worked consciously to fight that fear and get over it. And to a certain extent, I feel that I have finally got over those interview demons which I was facing at that point of time. Today, I'll say after that process, I faced certain interviews, not for competitive examination, but speaking in corporate and job context. And I think I've done fairly well in those interviews. So over these years, I have certain learnings, and I think through this video, my learnings can add value to your preparation. It can help you be conscious about interview while you are preparing for prelims and mains, and not leave the interview preparation for the last moment. So many experiences are there. I'll try to inculcate most of that, whatever I can recall at this point of time, through this video. And I hope you find this video useful, and valuable for your life and preparation in general. Before beginning this video, these are, I think, two most relevant video, because these are the exact transcripts and conversation which I actually faced in front of the RBI Grade B panel. And this will give you some idea of what actually went in that room. Perhaps you can make some of your own inferences about how one should approach, or rather not approach this interview. That is why I will say, if you see these videos, maybe in your life context, you'll be able to make your something which is more relevant for you. You'll be able to extract some insights which is useful for your personality in general. And that is why I would recommend you watching these two videos before proceeding and watching this video. First of all, I would like to share a little about the initiative, which came more because of the demand of the students and aspirants from the Telegram community, and many of them mailed me to take their mock interviews. This is not something which was I was very actively thinking upon, but once I saw certain number of requests in my inbox, I thought of coming up with a mock interview initiative to help the aspirants give a genuine feedback about their performance and any obvious lacuna what I can see in their conversation. And because of that, I came up with a detailed, in mock interview program for RBI Grade B back in I think November, I guess. And at that point of time, so this is the detailed program brochure which I put up in my group. So I promised to give maximum two personalized interview sessions. So let's say someone is comfortable with one mock interview, but he or she might require another mock interview, just to strengthen their preparation. So I told them so maximum two mock interviews can be there. I also gave them a quantitative score and assessment, detailed assessment on different parameters, which I think are usually judged in an interview. Uh, After every session, I gave them exclusively 15 to 20 minutes of feedback on not only on the interview performance, but addressing their other queries as well related to the interview and anything that they had, even while filling the biodata form. Initially, I thought of enrolling only 10, but ultimately around 18 candidates enrolled, and 17 of them I took mock interview of. So this was the overall program which I launched at that point of time. Uh, Gave them the recording as well, along with the detailed assessment, so that they can rewatch the recording and they can be self-critical about their performance and try to improve something which they feel uh, is missing from their conversation. So this is all about the mock interview program. So this was the program which I launched back in November, I think. And at that point of time, I did not think that 15 or 18 candidates will be interested in getting mock interviewed, but ultimately it was a good learning experience for me personally, because I've always been on the other side of the table, but this time becoming an interviewer and then interacting with so many of aspirants who are so knowledgeable and come with diverse backgrounds. So it was a challenge for me as well personally to judge them with my limited experience. But yeah, it was a great learning overall experience, and a lot of things I also learned, that what an interviewer expects when he is facing someone, when he's interviewing someone. So what are exactly his expectations are. So seeing the process from that mindset, it has given me quite a different dimension for this entire interview process. And I think on the basis of that, I've come up with this video. And I think few of the things which I'm going to tell you, perhaps it will be useful for you in the interview preparation. So whenever you are preparing, for any examination, you can keep these things in mind. That in the long term, ultimately, you have to face the interview, and nowadays interview are becoming make or break, just like how it is in the private sector. It's all about the interview. So even in the government sector, if they don't want to take you, even this year mark sheet, I can see it's, there has been extreme marking in the interview as usual. So it is pretty much confirmed that interview will be the deciding factor in most of the examinations. So you need to work cautiously, consciously on your personality along with the preparation of these examinations. Now, some people have a natural knack of delivering in conversations, and they have that, they're born with that skill. So this video is not exactly for them, but it's more for people like me who struggle a lot making or striking conversation with people. Either they are introvert, or either they have been socially cut off or engrossed in the preparation process. So these are some of the challenges which usually people who are preparing for government exams face. And on the basis of that, I think this video will be more useful for those kind of people who are actually, they struggle in striking conversations, they feel underconfident, or there can be multiple reasons, like someone is not very much uh, if someone has phobia of interviews. It's pretty, natural for these things to occur in an aspirant's minds. So this will be useful for that set of people. So like I told you, so I had 18 candidates registered for this interview program, out of which 17 appeared. So only one person took this mock twice, and that person actually made to the final list. So I'm really happy for him, and it shows the maturity of this aspirant, that he saw that he actually required another interview to improve, and he actually did that. And actually these are the small efforts which actually pay off, and this would have definitely helped him make him some improvement in the interview. And this is the marks of all those candidates which I mock interviewed. I gave them an indicative mark. Of course, I'll not tell or claim that these marks will be close to their actual interview marks, because there are a lot of factors that which actually impact the performance in the interview and the marking, because it is a very dynamic process. Things like the state of mind of the interviewer or the way he perceives your answer can change a lot. You can change your marks a lot, even if you perform well on that day. So it is very difficult to be exactly sure of how much a candidate's worth it is in an interview. But on the based on the performance in the mock interview, the recording, I saw the recording twice of every aspirant, and then assessed them, and then gave them a detailed feedback. This was the approximate mark. So these you see, these are the ones who actually made to the final list, and these are the ones who were not able to, unfortunately not able to cross the line because of either mains or either interview. I'm not sure, I've not analyzed marks of all the candidates actually. But this just gives you a general idea that at least in the mock interview, I did not see a huge noticeable gap between those who have been selected and those who have not been selected. Probably there can be few factors. Either it can be performance in the mains, or either it can be one or two, a bad day in the interview room, or either it can just be a bad luck. So there can, maybe these are some of the factors which actually sometimes make or break the selection. So considering that fact, you cannot take the credit away from those who have been selected. Of course, they have worked really, really hard, and luck is always a secondary factor. Hard work is always the primary factor. So this group also would have worked probably equally hard. This group has also worked hard, but again, this group had maybe a better day at the interview room and a little bit of slice of luck, that which is very crucial for these kind of examinations, where uh, which is where interview is primarily becoming the final deciding factor. Sample evalu. So this is you can see one of the sample evaluation forms which I actually gave to one of the candidates. Now this candidate is actually in the final selection list, and that is why I've taken his assessment that I gave him. So this is the detailed assessment I gave him, about my comment, personal, little bit of personalized comment on the basis of his performance in the interview. And of course, there is some general suggestions as well. Uh, and of course, there are some general suggestions as well. What area one is usually required to cover for this interview. So I gave him that feedback as well, and I think he must have worked on those feedback, and he was able to get through. So this is just one of the examples, and entire credit to the hard work of this aspirant. He actually worked really hard, and yeah. So this is about the initiative which I took back in November. On the basis of my personal interview experiences and the experience of conducting mock interviews and interacting with more than 18 candidates this year, I would classify certain do's into positive traits and certain negative traits. Needless to say, positive traits are those which one should incorporate in this interview, while giving the interview, while practicing the mock interview, or even while preparing for the examination. You need to have this kind of mindset. And there are certain negative traits which one must avoid when you are in the interview room, or even in this interview process. You should not let these kind of thoughts come into your mind, or let them stay or linger in your mind for long. So this is my general observation of being involved in this interview process for almost like 3 to 4 years. On the basis of that, I have come up with certain common points. Now these are very generic points, and personally speaking, there are many points which can be added to this list, or which can be eliminated from this list, depending upon the profile of a particular candidate, the background of a particular candidate, the situation he is in. So there are a lot of factors which, on the basis of which this list can be personalized. But since this is a very open and general video, I'll try to cover those points which are usually helpful for this interview process, and which one can definitely look forward to inculcate in their interview preparation journey. So first and foremost is Confidence and calmness in the interview. Now, I remember my first interview, 2022, when I was in the room, I was very much overconfident in that interview. The reason for that was at that particular year, I was writing UPSC mains after 1 month. I was pretty damn confident that I'm 100% prepared for this interview, and whatever they are going to ask me, I'm definitely going to give a very good quality answer to them. But the problem with that was when I went in the room, I did not realize that I was going for an RBI interview. I just thought it would be very intellectually, stimulating and opinion based questions, this, that. Unfortunately, there were some questions which were totally factual in nature, and I was not prepared for those kind of questions, and I paid the price for that mindset, preconceived mindset, uh, or the overconfidence with which I went into that room. And the second part, at the point when I was actually losing the conversation with them, and there was to and fro, there were questions thrown at me which were very factual in nature, and I absolutely lost my head at that point of time, and I panicked. I was not at all able to give confident, whatever answers I knew. Rather, I actually ended up bluffing, or trying to make some answers just to not feel awkward personally in that room, which even washed out any percent of chance that I had of making truth in that interview. So this is one of the things which you must inculcate, that no matter what the situation is, stay confident and calm. I understand that this comes a lot and depends a lot on what you have read, how much you have read, what depth you have covered, how much consistency you are reading. So there are a lot of factors which you don't realize at the time of preparing, that they can actually impact your performance in the interview ultimately. So know this thing: the consistent you are, the hard work you're putting into, the more confident and calmness will be there in your conversations. Another thing is, confidence and calmness is also dependent on one's personality, and some people, they naturally have that way of speaking and talking to strangers, or rather, you know uh, handling the randomness which is put in front of them. Some of us who are actually well prepared, and they're still not able to remain confident or calm when they're faced with some kind of randomness. So this is another thing which you need to consciously inbuild in your preparation, that whenever you are reading something, try to form an opinion about it. Try to imagine that you are presenting this to someone, you're talking to someone on that topic, and how would you present your arguments, how would you structure your arguments, what can be the cross questions on that. Usually in the rush of examination, because of the vastness of syllabus, we don't think a lot on these topics. And quite honestly, I was also not one of those candidates who used to think a lot about this. But now at this point of time, when I see back at my journey, what I definitely know, that had I prepared with this kind of approach, or had I given, let's say, a little bit of extra time into introspecting what I have read, how I can convince someone on the basis of my knowledge of the things what I've read, I did not do those kind of things. And perhaps that is one of the reasons why I was underconfident in the interview, or I was not able to handle the pressure in the interview. So this is one of my personal learnings I would like to share in this video. Another thing which actually flows from this element of calmness is the structure of your answers. Now, this is something what I observe in the mock interview. A lot of brilliant candidates having spectacular profiles, CFA, FRM certifications. Unfortunately, they were not able to structure their answers properly. And I was very particularly looking for this element in their answers, because I am myself someone who struggles in structuring statements in a proper way. Because the problem with me, I'll tell you, is I think in Hindi, and then I translate into English, and then I speak, which most of us do, because it is not our native language. So let's say someone who is coming from a humble background, or let's say someone who has not been conditioned a lot into speaking English, they usually struggle in structuring their answers in English. And because you know I have studied from English medium, but I'll not say that speaking English is something which I used to do, a lot during my schooling time, or even in my graduation years, or even at my job place. So this is something which I don't do repetitively, and perhaps that is why I struggle in structuring answers. If you stay calm, it will help you structure your answers, and your answers will appear well crafted in front of panel. It will also help you build a good body language when you are speaking. You will appear more confident, and you will be able to speak your point, or rather put your point with more conviction in front of the panel. Naturally, if you are lying, if you are bluffing, this thing is not going to help you a lot. But let's say if you are 50% correct in a certain question, the way you put forward your answer, this impacts the impression that you are trying to create in front of the panel. So it is definitely a very positive point when the way you're putting up your answers in front of the panel, right? So structuring of answers is something that we usually ignore in terms of how we are speaking the answer, because when we are writing the answer we structure it pretty well. We tend to follow all the rules of the grammar, we proofread it, but at the time of speaking, how you are conveying your answers is very important. And if you're not able to structure it properly, it doesn't create a very good impression. Now, I'll not say it is a extreme negative point, because the panel, I think, is usually considered of the fact that someone cannot be a well versed person in terms of speaking English, so that's fine. But the basic structuring, if you're doing it well, so this helps the person who is interacting with you to understand what you're trying to say, and that is what ultimately communication is all about. We all have read that, right? So this is one thing which you must keep in mind when you are speaking or practicing any mock interview. The third thing is the knowledge about RBI. I'll not say you need to know a lot about the technical things that RBI does in detail. For example, you are not required to understand the detailed process of how the RBI is conducting stress test on the banks, what are the parameters it is considering. So that is little bit of in depth of what RBI does. But you need to know certain things. For example, RBI Act, there are certain important sections that is required, that is expected from your end. You need to know certain basics about the reports, basics about the RBI as an organization, its role and functions, and very importantly, you need to know the roles and responsibilities of a grade B officer. You can find these things, everything is there on the website. You don't have to put a lot of efforts into it, just go on it and read about it once or twice, and maybe you will be able to understand what I'm trying to say. So if you are aware of the organization, you know the organization well, so it will reflect in your answers, it will reflect in your personality that you are naturally interested in that organization. For me personally, I will say that RBI was just one of the options back in at that time. I was also focusing on other examinations, and perhaps that was the reason why I was not able to convince the panel with my body language that I actually wanted to join that organization, and I actually wanted it bad enough, and I have given a lot of time and hard work into the preparation. So that is also one of the factors which reflect, because they are very experienced people, so they're able to figure out everything, or psychologically. So this is one thing which I would suggest, that you read more about that organization. The more you read about it, the more you'll be able to internalize. Third is a good balance of technical and personality. Now it is just combination of these 3 points. If you have good balance of technical, for example, if you know the basics fundamentals of Indian economy, let's say fiscal deficit, you know how fiscal deficit can be impacted by inflation, how currency depreciation is related to inflation. Now these are certain basic technical things that you are required to understand, if you are aspiring to get into the interview and appear in front of the panel. In addition to this, if you have a good pleasant personality, the way you talk, the way you interact, the first impression that you create in front of the panel, the your knack or your understanding of the people that you're talking to, what do they actually want, what is their personality, how do they usually judge people. If you're able to figure these things out, if you're a good people reader, if you have good people reading skills, if you're able to understand the requirement of someone, what he's trying to say, what he's asking of you, know, this this forms a very comprehensive and holistic personality, which is a very ideal personality for interview. Now the thing is, what an ideal personality of interview is, what your personality is. What you're required to do is to find the gap and work to bridge that gap. It appears very simple, but it is very complex process, and it's a long term process. It's not going to happen in 1 month or 2 months. It is a continuous process, and you need to do that in the during the preparation of prelims and mains stage. So it's a continuous process, and you need to keep this thing in your subconscious mind that, okay, I'm reading something, but what if I'm asked to speak on this? How I'm going to present this in front of someone who knows these things, right? So you need to be ready with that kind of approach. Now I'm not telling you to prepare, let's say, data of PIB in that way, but if you're reading a topic broadly, you should be able to convey what you're trying to say. And of course there are certain tricks which I'll share with you later, that how you can improve or make your communication more impactful, especially in the interviews context, or especially in the examinations context of RBI, right? And another thing is how engaging you are with the panel. Now, for the longest time, it was a misconception from my end that interview is primarily to check your knowledge, because I always thought that, okay, I don't have any personality issues as such. So if I'm going there, the only concern for me is to give answer to the factual questions which is being thrown at me. So this was a mindset with which I have, for long, I have tried to deal with the interview process, and trust me, this does not help, right? Only relying on the technical knowledge and thinking that you'll be able to answer technical questions, and then you mug up data points and then you go in front of the panel, this will not help. You need to be very comprehensive, and when you're talking to the panel, it's a conversation, so you need to be considerate about their points as well. Let's say in an opinion based question, you need to consider their points, and then you need to present your arguments in front of them without appearing arrogant, of course. So it is something which I'll say is again a very personalized skill, which varies from person to person. Now someone can learn this very quickly, someone needs to practice this a lot. I personally fall in the latter part, so I'm someone who actually needs to practice this a lot, and I'm still doing it consciously because I know this is not my strong point. I'm working on this at my workplace. I try to implement this, so whenever I'm trying to interact with someone, I try to be empathetic, try to listen to them more, I try to be curious. So these are small things which I try to do consciously now, so that it becomes a part of my personality, and in the long run it helps me in building relationships with different kinds of person, as in different stakeholders. It is something which is going to help you in your workplace as well, and of course if you are well versed with it, it will help you in the interview process for sure. Now, certain negative traits I would like to highlight which you must avoid if you want to appear in any interview. First is, don't be nervous and hesitant. So it is something which is like related to multiple factors. First can be obviously the level of your preparation. Second can be if you have some natural hesitancy in talking to people, social isolation, you have been socially cut off for long because of the preparation process. Third can be you have phobia of interview. I've seen certain people who are very extrovert, they're very good at talking to people, but the moment it comes about interview, they are not good at performing in the interview. So that is perhaps because of the lack of depth in their preparation. That can be one of the reasons, and another can be they have a phobia, or they have some previous experiences which was not good for them. That can also be one of the reasons. So these kind of things make people nervous and hesitant. Do you feel nervous or hesitant when you are when you are interview? Have you thought why this nervousness or hesitancy is coming into your head? So if you have some experiences, you can definitely comment. This will help the community at large to know what different challenges students are actually facing in the interview process and how they can actively fight these challenges, because interview is usually a very ignored part until one faces the interview. So I don't want someone to uh, realize this just before the interview, that these are the negative traits in him, right? So if someone can share their experiences, that can be very helpful for the community at large. Second is rambling and unclear responses. So sometimes what we do, even we know the right answer, but because we are not very confident, or we don't have habit of conversing professionally, we are not able to structure our answers clearly, and we give incomplete sentences while reverting back. And this creates a very bad impression in the conversation, and it appears that even though you know things, you're not able to put those things confidently in front of other person. This means that even though this means that you are underprepared, or even if you're prepared, you're not confident of your preparation. So this is the message which comes out in these kind of situations. So either you know the answer or you don't know the answer. Just whatever it is, be clear and confident about it. If it is an opinion based question, definitely if you have reached interview, you must have some basic knowledge of that particular area. Try to leverage that knowledge in front of the panel and try to give clear structured responses to them. Try to be confident, and as much as possible try to back your answer with certain facts. If you are backing it with some quantitative data, this is the best part. I always suggest people, whenever you are speaking something, especially on a very generic topic, if you are giving some data point, reference to some report, reference to some example from some other country, some model, so this creates a very positive impression in front of the panel. The moment you speak something, and if the person is interested in that, you'll instantly gain some brownie points of speaking that particular example or number or model, etc. So try to inculcate these things whenever you are reading, whenever when you're trying to speak speak on some topic related to your syllabus. So do that, try to do that consciously, and it will definitely help you in the long run. Third is weak understanding of RBI's role. So if you're doing this thing for RBI interview, trust me, your interview, you'll not get good marks at all, even if you give answers to all other questions. If you're not able to clearly understand the role of organizations, the general roles of that organization. For example, if you go on the website of RBI, you'll find a PDF of its function. If you're very serious, try to cover that. That is a very basic PDF, around 100 pages. If you're covering that well, you'll have a good understanding of what RBI does as an organization, what are the different complications involved in its operations, what are the different departments are there, and what their role is in facilitating the decisions that RBI board takes. So this will help you a lot in developing a connection to this organization, and also to and also help you on certain topics in the syllabus as well. So do read that PDF. It's a prerequisite, I would say, for the interview process. You need to have a good balance of technical knowledge and a good personality. If you're thinking that if you're over relying on something, you are taking a risk. I'm not telling that you will be eliminated if you're over reliant on something, but there is high risk that you will be eliminated, because either way, if you are exposed, if you're exposed in an interview, it is a definite negative thing. Either it is technically, or it is in your personality. If they find something related to integrity, or you're not empathic, you're not team player, so these kind of thing, if they can judge you in through your conversations, trust me, it's not a very good thing for the interview. So don't be over reliant on either, but try to work on both aspects as much as you can. Of course, you cannot one cannot be at an ideal stage at both aspects, but try to be close to the ideal aspect as possible. Try to be as close to the ideal stage as possible. And lastly, one way answers and no follow-ups. So this is also one of the things, like I have seen, especially in the opinion based questions. So if something is asked to you, and you give straight away flat one line response, which so it makes the conversation appear like a question answer session. So do not do that. Whenever an opinion based question is asked to you, try to give at least 4 to 5 sentences, so that you are able to convey that you can build an opinion and you can sustain it with your logical thinking. So this reveals how well you are able to think on the feet. Are you able to build coherent logical inferences, and can you able and are you able to sustain your logic with follow-up questions? So usually what I understand, that if there are a lot of follow-up questions or back and forth conversation in a good sense, if it is there, so usually that interview is a good interview. So this is a sign of good interview. But if it is more like a question answer session, you see a lot of random topics being thrown at you, and you answer one question, then another totally unrelated question is asked. So this is not a sign of very healthy interview in my opinion. So this is just my opinion. I can be wrong about it, but this is what I personally feel on the basis of the mock interview that I've taken this year. So because when you are in back and forth conversation with a person, you build a personal rapport with them in that short duration. And if you are able to build that rapport with, let's say, chairman, then of course it will give you an advantage at the time of marking. So do remember that, and try to observe how you are building a rapport with in a professional setting or with your colleagues, or let's say the study group where you're reading or you're interacting with other people. So these small things that you are required to do, consciously observing yourself, especially at the time of talking to other person formally. So some of the common mistakes or the interview demons I would say that you must overcome for this examination is not understanding RBI's role and recent policies. It is pretty much expected that you know the basics about the RBI because you want to join that organization. You are aware of the recent happenings of that organization. You know some of the major policy changes related to that, some news, some announcement. So try to cover this thing before going into the interview. Again, as much as possible, avoid generic answers, because interviewers, they absolutely love something which is very specific to you, and they want to know you. They do not want to know a broad general opinion of some of why you want to join RBI. If you're giving answers like it is the best organization, so I don't think it's a very good. So usually this is what I suggested to most of the aspirants who were there in the mock interview. uh, you will have to, and it is kind of linked to this part as well, career gaps and shift. So it is kind of, I'm covering both these points here. So you need to link the decisions that you have taken to justify why you are there at that interview seat, right? So either you can be totally honest about it, like it's a career option, you have prepared about different exams, but you think that at this point of time you will be you joining RBI would be best for you on the basis of your performance in different examinations. That's fine, you can say that. But it would be better to say, let's say if you are making a career shift from banking to RBI, that because you have worked in a certain department, you think you'll be able to add value more through RBI in a regulatory or policy making domain or policy implementation domain or supervisory domain, something like that. You can shape up your answer like that to convince them that whatever you have done previously is not going to be redundant for you or RBI, right? So if you're able to connect the dots, I think it will be a very good answer for why RBI question. And this is something which I suggest to all the mock interview aspirant, that try to make your answers that way. If you're making a very general, now I understand in some cases there is no other option, you cannot always make a story, but there are usually, I have seen cases where you can easily link your skills, link your background to some role in RBI, and for that the roles and responsibilities of grade B officer becomes quite handy. That PDF, when you read it, you'll see certain skills which you can directly map from your previous experiences. You can share some anecdote to connect your interest to RBI, or what you can give to RBI, right? So this is how you usually build stories. So if you can make some good story and deliver that with conviction and confidence and defend the basic defense of that, you can carry. So it's a it's kind of thesis only, right? Because most of us, we have we just give that exam as one of the career options because of the lucrative salary scale or the location. There can be multiple factors. So if you're able to build a thesis and defend that thesis in front of the panel, if the basic defense, not I'll not say a high level defense, because you can always cross question, you can always get into whys of of any argument, right? But to a certain level, if you're able to defend it, I think go for those kind of anecdotes or those kind of stories. That will help your case a lot, right? Also, these memorized and robotic responses do not give those kind of responses. So when you are talking to someone, try to appear candid, and again, do not make it a question answer session. Try not to do that, because it instantly creates an atmosphere where the interviewer is disinterested in talking to you, and probably they'll usually tell the next member to ask question, or the next member will say, okay, I'm not interested in asking questions. So this is something which I've also faced in the interview, so I can tell you from my personal experiences. Avoid doing those kind of responses. Try to be candid. Try to at least act that you are thinking that answer, and then take some pause and then speak that answer in a confident and more controlled manner, right? So that will help your case in the interview again to gain you good marks. Small things like body language, these also matter a lot, right? If you're making a lot of hand gestures in the interview, some people, I think, when I was virtually interviewing them, I saw their body was in constant oscillation when they were talking. So I told them that do not do that. If you're doing it subconsciously, try to control it consciously, because this might happen. Some of us, we don't know, we are not aware of the subconscious movement that our bodies do when we are talking or doing some action. So that is also one thing that you are required to keep in mind. Do not do that, because these are absolutely avoidable, and if you are avoiding that, you are avoiding negative marks in the interview. So this is one thing that you need to keep in mind. Few positive or few tips that you can actually implement. For example, for structuring, I would say, so there is something called STAR approach: situation, task, action, result. So there are sometimes questions asked to you. Let's say, uh, for example, you are sent to a bank, so how will you inspect, or what are the things that you will look into in these kind of situation based questions. Or there can be, let's say, HR based questions like, tell me a time when you managed a conflict at your workplace. So these kind of questions, you can adopt this STAR approach. So first, one or two line give what the situation is, then one or two line what tasks you are required to carry out, one or two lines that what actions you are going to take, and then one or two lines on how what the result was or what your learnings were. So this is a very basic way of structuring your communication for situation based questions. So you can implement that consciously. You can start implementing that right now whenever you're talking to someone. So uh, practice more and more, and this will help you structure your answers even better, right? Second is, it's again a prerequisite. You need to have strong RBI and economics knowledge. You cannot just rely on some particular section to compensate for these sections. That can be done in mains, but again, if you're doing this in the interview, there are high chances that you will be exposed. So avoid doing that. Third is stay calm and composed. I told you, practice more and more mock interviews. Try to record yourself while speaking. Try to take mock interviews of your friends. Ask them to take your mock interviews. So do this to and fro. Maybe you can do this once a month in your preparation. So that will help you gauge the level of preparation that you have in terms of appearing in the interview. So this will also help you in the long term. Then try to be interactive. So whenever you are given any option to ask counter questions, or if you want to clarify something, be very upfront about it, be very confident about it, and ask relevant counter questions wherever you think it is required. So it shows that you have the right mindset, and even when you are in front of someone who is very senior to you, you have that courage and confidence to ask the right questions. So this matters a lot, and if you're able to ask the right counter questions, it will help you a lot in the interview in terms of appearing your personality to be confident. And lastly, I've also suggested a very personalized connection to RBI. So the more you can connect your experiences, your academics, your work experience, or life experiences in general to RBI's work, RBI's requirement, and the way you proposition yourself, the value proposition you put in front of the panel in the why RBI question. So this will set the tone of the interview, and if you start the interview really well, there are high chances that you'll get good marks, because like it said that well begin is half done. So if you start these questions, if you tackle those questions nicely, it will increase your confidence, it will build your momentum for the rest of the interview. So a good first impression will compensate for those gaps that you'll have in technical areas. So this is also one thing that is required and you need to keep in mind. And ultimately, it's a long-term process. It's a part of the preparation process. Don't wait for it to, and don't leave it for the last. Continuously do this consciously. It will not take a lot of efforts. It might take effort for someone. It again varies on the your current personality and your current situation, but it can be done with some consistent effort. You are putting some consistent effort consistently, and ultimately it will compound and it will reflect at the time of appearing in the interview in front of the panel. So these are some of the basic questions. Try to answer these questions from your current preparation level, and just see, record yourself and just see how you are answering. If you want to find some ideal answer, you can use ChatGPT and answer these questions on the basis of your resume or profile. You can assess that using ChatGPT and ask uh, the answers, standard answers to these questions through ChatGPT and compare with your answers, and then see how much your answers are varying to uh, some standard answer that ChatGPT is giving. Again, do not take those answers by heart. It is again just an AI giving answer, but it will give you some idea that what an standard answer can be. Some of the potential action at this point of time which you can implement is practice some mock interviews to simulate real conditions. If you think you have decent command over preparation, you can try conducting mock interviews in your study groups, uh, or on the basis of what the topics what you have read, you can just limit the questions to those topics. In addition to the general HR questions, you can always practice those questions. So try doing that. Try to stay updated. Needless to say, you are doing this in the mains for the mains and prelims, but even from the interview perspective, try to build your opinion on very trending topics which are especially related to RBI or economics in general. Try to do that. Watch your own mock performance. Try to speak in front of the mirror. Try to record yourself when you are speaking on some topic. Try to comprehensively understand a particular topic when you and see and gauge your performance, how you're talking to someone about that topic. If possible, join discussion groups. It will help you a lot and learn from others experiences. It's a lot better to interact while speaking and not writing on Telegram, because when you are writing you can always structure your points, you can delete words, but when you are speaking, so this will give you an actual sense of how you are able to convey your thoughts to others, right? And over the time, the more you do that, the better you will become in doing that. So try to join some discussion group where you can have weekly discussion, either on group call or some kind of Zoom sessions. Try to be part of those kind of groups. And ultimately, the more confident you are, the closer to perfection you will be. Be genuine, be composed, be calm, try to be authentic self, and convey whatever you're trying to convey with full confidence. And of course, do not bluff, do not lie. Uh, on the basis of your existing knowledge, try to give your best and authentic response in a calm and composed way in front of the panel. So this is the general potential actions which I would suggest at this point of time. Someone who is actually still in the preparation stage, because the exam is, I think, far away, maybe in June, July somewhere. The exam might happen, so there's still a lot of time to work on this. And if you're doing it consciously, it will help you ultimately, let's say in the November or December, when you'll be actually facing the interview. So if you want any more insights, any particular questions that you have, you can comment. I'll respond to your comment. And if you need free profile review regarding your current profile which you have for this examination or any other examination, you can always mail me. If you need some tips, what courses you should do, or what more you can do to make your profile strong, because now I have a certain database of different candidates who have actually made to this final list, and also of those candidates who are not able to make the final list, but they are having a very good profile. On the basis of that, I have certain insights on what you can do to improve your profile, so you can write for that as well. And lastly, if you need personalized mock interviews, you can always contact me. I will be able to take your mock interviews. But you know, if you are actually giving some interview and you have qualified the mains, so of course you will be prioritized. But if you want it on a monthly basis, for that also I can think, if I get certain number of candidates, I can do that as well. But do connect, regardless of whatever your case may be. I'll give you responses accordingly. Thank you for watching this video. You can connect for any other support that you might require. I'm available on Telegram, email. You can DM me over here, write in the group, and if you personally want to share something, you can also email me over here. So thank you. Have a great day. Thanks for watching this video.